Jhariah is one of the most non-committal artists I've ever worked with. And I'm a person who comes from a background of just like, okay, I'm gonna commit this single instrument to tape now and mix with that for the rest of the time. And then Jhariah will come back to me just like, no, I redid some of the parts of this. Like, are you fucking serious?
Your process terrifies me.
On this week's episode of The Record Process, we're happy to welcome Jhariah Clare, along with his drummer and producer, Cole Raser. Jhariah, as an artist, has been more or less prolific over the last 3 years, releasing a series of increasingly wild singles that force you to pay attention. Uproxx even described the songs as a masterclass in musical excess, with the release selling out of its first vinyl pressing before the shipment had even come in. We invited Jhariah and Cole on the show to talk about Jhariah's latest 9-track EP, A Guide to Faking Your Own Death, which dropped July 23rd in 2021 and garnered quite a bit of buzz. We had an amazing conversation diving deep into Jhariah's unique linear methods of composition and how that informs the often wildly eclectic and emotive song structures found across his entire EP. I really think you're going to love this one, so let's dive right in after a quick note from our sponsor. DistroKid is the most affordable service for independent artists to distribute their music to all streaming platforms, and it comes filled with a suite of tools to help you elevate your career. DistroKid not only allows you to spread your music across the streaming ecosystem, and yes, that includes TikTok, but it also helps you share your story with labels via the Upstream tool. You can engage your fan base using its text messaging feature and even create unique lyric videos. Record Process listeners now have a chance to get 30% off the first year of their membership at DistroKid. Just head down to the show notes and sign up using our affiliate link. We can't wait to hear what you've been working on, so don't hesitate to reach out to us at truelevelstudio.com/therecordprocess and share your release plans with us for the upcoming year. And now, here's our interview. Without further ado, Jhariah, Cole, welcome to The Record Process. Nice to have you here.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Now, full disclosure, we've been chatting a little bit ahead of this, and you guys have been taking care of some troubleshooting things like the true professionals that you are. But that is not why we're here. We're here to talk about the newest EP and the entire process behind it. We're going to try and pack as much in as little time as possible, and hopefully get some interesting behind the scenes looks on everything about it. And Tom, if you're ready, I'm ready. It seems like they're ready. Let's dive in. So let's set the stage for it. A little bit of background on you two, and we won't belabor it because a lot of that stuff can probably be found pretty easily for those interested, but it does bear repeating. How'd y'all meet, and how did this collaborative process start? I believe Pratt, correct?
Yeah, it's very true.
Oh my God, I love that.
We met at school through another band that we were in for a little bit. And kind of like
for a little bit, that was still like
it was like a while. I'm condensing things, but like basic, yeah. I guess to give a really good kind of a origin story for us. Originally, we tried, or I tried like having that band like work as a backing band to like live shows because obviously there's like a lot of stuff going on in the songs. There's only so many instruments I can play. And right. I really wanted to try doing some shows. And I think it took 2 shows for them to be like, I can't do this. It's just too much. Except for Cole.
I love it. You whittled them down, and Cole is the one that stuck. That's good. Yeah. See, sometimes you gotta just divide and isolate and find the good stuff. The cream will rise, if you will.
Well, to be fair, even before then, we met by me listening to The Great Tale and just telling you just like, this is pretty good, but like the mix is kind of bad.
Whoa! Ever consider having someone who knows how to mix? Look at this.
Oh my god!
I might know a guy.
Wow. Yeah, I can put you in touch with someone. So the true it started off from the jump with just blatant honesty from a creative standpoint, but also trying to give some constructive feedback.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Wow, I love that. Well, I'm glad that also in some lanes could go horribly awry. So how did you go?
In hindsight, also just like the audacity to just be like, hey, this thing you did could be better.
Hey, this thing
I never thought of it that way. Yeah.
This thing that's really close and really personal to you, I'm going to go shit all over it right now.
Yeah. Let me.
I didn't shit all over it. I liked it. Just like my day-to-day job is being a mix engineer. So like, if I'm going to make a critique on anything, it's going to be the mix.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of because it seemed like you appreciated the music, versus like, you ever just meet somebody who it's obvious they just want to work on your stuff, Yeah. And they're like, I feel like you're really lacking specifically in the area where I could offer help,
Yeah, totally.
But it didn't seem like that kind of thing.
No, that's amazing. And that, that's so true too, in terms of, talking about like finding the right collaborative partners and things like that. It really does, sometimes bear, that understanding of, hey, who is actually excited about it. It's like not just who's there, who's available, who's all those things, but who is going to really like take it at, because at the end of the day, no one's going to like, or typically not be as invested or as connected to something as the writer or creator, but you can get as close as possible to that, and if it seems like someone like Cole came and had like that genuine, appeal and approach because he was digging what he heard, right? So, and I think that's really important, especially for a lot of our listeners, that lesson there being like, a lot of times people that are trying to, build their career as a producer, as an artist, and are looking for other partners and are just kind of like throwing a bunch of, cold emails and text at the wall that this is like, people can just see right through that, and that's not entertaining to be like, hey, I'll do this for free. I'll do this for whatever. It's like, if you're just wanting, tracks or you're just, wanting whatever, it's like people are going to know that, and people are going to know when you genuinely see something and resonate with it. So that's awesome. And that's, that's probably why Cole got away with that kind of honesty.
Yeah. That's great.
And I love that.
Wasn't that like the first day I met you two?
That was like the first time we ever met.
Yeah.
Even better. I love that. That's great.
So what we're saying is the takeaway there. If you want to have an amazing creative partnership with someone that you're just meeting for the first time, be brutally honest right off the jump, and it's going to work.
There's a point there.
Yeah,
there might be. I don't know if that's the point, but there's a lesson in there.
There's a lesson
for sure
somewhere there.
I don't think that's totally the point, but yes, indeed, being I think honesty in terms of we Tom and I, especially with a lot of creative parts and a lot of cooks in the kitchen or bringing people together, there's a way of building trust, and that's why I wanted to know and why we always kind of ask about the origin story, as it were, because I think that shows a lot of the trust and how that gets built to make great art and make some stuff that is wholly unique and in a really honest way. And so that's awesome, that it was started off that quick too, because you get past a lot of those steps where otherwise you might not, it might not work.
Yeah, I hate the steps of like tiptoeing around like, oh yeah, the song's really great, the vocals are really cool, like the vocals are really cool is the worst thing to
my god,
you're just like,
I've gotten that one a lot.
I cannot imagine getting that as a comment.
Yeah,
your vocals are really cool. What does that mean?
Yeah, like just tell me that the snare is shit, man. Like tell me the snare is shit. Like
and Cole would, it sounds like, which I love.
Oh, definitely.
I am brutally honest when it comes to like technical stuff with music to a fault, to the point where I fear like when I'm just like talking to people, I'm offending them because I mentioned something and just like, no, I didn't mean that to be like, I didn't mean to disparage your work.
Yeah, totally.
Well, you know what, and that goes to show that in terms of, and Tom and I can totally relate. Jhariah, I'm sure you can as well, in your own way and what you do from a writing standpoint and a performing and tracking standpoint, that sometimes you get stuck in your own lane. So it's tough to turn off that portion of your creative brain because you're almost digesting everything with I wonder what he did with that snare. Or it's like,
Oh, definitely.
It's an interesting way to approach the drums. So listen, moving forward, so you built that foundation, the creative partnership, and it's been kind of growing and developing, and now has culminated in this new group of songs, A Beginner's Guide to Faking Your Death, which is awesome, by the way, just to, blow a little bit of smoke out there, but in a true, honest sense. And that's why, we were both really excited to sit down and go through it, because there's so much packed into this, like 25 minutes or so, whatever it is. And I wanted to start, taking a linear approach and talking about, the inspiration that you're drawing from and where you're getting that for some of these songs, and where it all kind of begins, maybe in a specific sense. Obviously, it's different song to song, but maybe you can talk a little bit about, generally speaking, for a number of these songs, where they all tend to start.
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as where they started, it definitely, I think the core of it was trying to take like all of my favorite things, and just kind of pulling from everywhere in whatever way that I can, like I remember distinctly that the introduction track, I started it like immediately after watching The Incredibles 2, because I was just like so impressed by that soundtrack that I was like, God, like what if I made like a song like this, like a rock song like this, and it just had like all these like weird little instruments and stuff, and that was like a whole thing where there aren't even a whole lot of artists I could think of that I would have pulled from, like, definitely subconsciously pulled from a lot of different places, but the core of it was really like that soundtrack. And then I just kind of built on that, and then it's one of those things where I just brought it to Cole. It was like, hey, I have this thing. It was like some horn samples, like keys, and like some scratch drums. And he was like, yeah, like we can do something. But
this was a while before the EP was even an idea.
Yeah.
Like that was originally like the intro track to what would have been an album.
Yeah. Album 2.
Yeah.
LP 2.
What was it? Okay. What was the first working title of this? Cause I always find that super interesting if it was, something else, or what the initial, like, I got to name this something if I'm saving this session right now.
Oh, for the
check-in.
Yeah,
right?
It was originally called Check-In for the song, because it was supposed to be like a whole like hotel like musical type thing.
I forgot that's what the whole point of the second album was going to be.
Yeah, it's a whole thing that we ended up scrapping. But when we got around to like, we were almost done with this new EP, and I really wanted an intro track on there. And we were so low on time. And then I just suddenly remembered, like, wait, there's this whole other intro, like, demo that's not going to make it onto this other album that I love. Like, do we try and, like, speed run turning this into a real song? And I feel like it just had, like, such a strong foundation that we didn't actually have to do a whole lot with it.
Oh, man.
Honestly, all we really did was, like, change some lyrics.
Yeah.
Add like a part in the middle of it.
Pretty much didn't do a whole lot at all. You might have like retracked drums.
Oh, I definitely retracked drums.
Yeah, and then it was it. And I feel like it just kind of like put a little bow on top of the record,
Oh, that's awesome. So this was a piece of music and an idea that you had that just kind of ostensibly had been scrapped, and then after the rest of these songs came together for the EP, you circled back and this kind of just was a perfect fit to introduce everything. I love that.
I don't know if you ever truly scrap songs.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's very rare that I'll scrap songs. Like, I know some people like to write like 100 songs and like choose their favorite like dozen. But for me, it's more like I'll start a song with like the intention of like which piece of the puzzle it's going to be. And I think, regardless, that space has to get filled somehow. So the song might change very drastically, but there aren't a whole lot of like songs on like my hard drive that just never, got finished. They usually go somewhere.
Now, like, if you're like, yeah, fuck this song for right now, what like stage do you leave it in? I feel like that's like always a really like interesting thing, talking with like different people, where like it's like, oh yeah, I wrote this riff and like nothing came of it like after 20 minutes, so it's just a riff on a hard drive. Or is it like, are they like completely built out and it's just like, I don't know how to like weave this in and out, it's just like a splattering of ideas?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, how messy does it get in there?
Yeah.
It's a little of both. It gets pretty messy.
I've seen some messy FL files.
Sick.
I've seen some gore. I've seen some horror.
I've seen some timeline gore.
It gets a little crazy because I definitely come from a very like electronic background, you know. So like my first impulse when I'm writing a song is always to just like open up FL Studio and just like go crazy with it and just start playing, you know. So a lot of times like an idea will come to me and I'll just keep like going at it and throwing things at it until I hit a wall. And then, you know, usually at that point, it's at least like an idea of a song. Like every once in a while, it'll just be like, I get like a thought and I just have to put it down.
Totally.
You know, but I think as far as like starting songs, they tend to become pretty fleshed out, you know?
I love that.
So have you always found yourself working in FL Studios, or do you kind of work? Is that how the two of you communicate, or is that just, you know, the baseline of it? Or is that oh boy,
very much no.
Okay,
we hit a hot topic.
We hit the point of contention, and I can't wait to get there. But before we say that just back to the gore and mess of your drawing board, I think that's interesting, and I'm always curious to ask. And obviously, even like you know, we get asked this question a lot with like Wonder Year stuff with my band, and Tom, who just finished a great solo record that'll start seeing the light of day in a few months. You know, we know that every song is different in a lot of ways, but I share that approach where there aren't always a lot of songs or ideas left that are scrapped fully, you know, because and I appreciate that about you and the way you view the process of trying to make a cohesive grouping of songs. And I wonder if that has anything to do with your illustration background and in that visual medium, and how that connects to it, or how that maybe informs some of the inspiration. If you're just going sonically, or if you see something. You mentioned obviously the soundtrack to the movie was kind of the initial like quick, you know, emotional, you know, surge that had you kind of dive into what became the intro. Are there any other ways that you know, see those two coming together to start that creation process?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, the whole process is just very, very visual. I mean, when I think about like making a song and making like a piece of, you know, art or like an animation, it feels like the same part of my brain, kind of like working through a different like filter, I guess. You know, like it's a lot of the same, like trying to piece something together. Like sometimes you see the overall composition, or sometimes it's like you're really into a color that day, or you have like a narrative idea that you want to tell. And it's just trying to find all the other pieces that are going to make that, you know, something that's really just enjoyable and something that's going to satisfy that like scratch, you know, in your brain.
Yeah,
totally. I just want to like get this straight. So primary songwriter, and then you bring over Cole, and then Cole fleshes it out. Is that kind of like how y'all collaborate? Or like, Cole, do you ever bring anything?
I like a very bass nature. Yeah.
It super depends from song to song, but I'd say like 75% of the time, what'll happen is I'll kind of just go crazy with a song and turn it into like a pretty fully fleshed out demo. You know, like it'll be like, you know, production and everything, and going back to the whole FL Studio thing. So Cole stands pretty strongly by Pro Tools.
I don't stand strongly by Pro Tools. It's what I know best. If I had a Mac and could use Luna, I would use Luna every day of the week. but I'm stuck with Pro Tools.
Fair.
Cole, does that come from, you mentioned like a background working out of studios. Is that what that comes from, as just like the broadest studio language?
Yeah, it very, very much my entire knowledge of what I do comes from learning from old white men. So, and old white men love their Pro Tools.
And them cursing at Pro Tools crashing every day. Yes.
I've never had Pro Tools crashing be too much of a problem. However, I won't say it's the best for production or at least for demoing stuff, which is why I'm very glad Jhariah is the one to demo.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Because once it gets to me, then I know how to make Pro Tools work for pretty much anything you throw at me.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that kind of creates like it informs the process of demoing a little bit to where I'm like, okay, there's no, there's like a back and forth creatively, but like once it gets into Pro Tools, it's not coming out.
Yeah. And
so,
and like then like I'm assuming you're like committing your like stems and stuff, and you're like, well, it's committed now. It's gonna take an hour to like recommit it. So I guess it is that. So like
no, legit, that is a conversation me and Jhariah have had so much. Jhariah is one of the most non-committal artists I've ever worked with. Man. And I'm a person who comes from a background of just like, okay, I'm going to commit this single instrument to tape right now and mix with that for the rest of the time. And then Jhariah will come back to me just like, no, I redid some of the parts of this. Like, are you fucking serious?
Your process terrifies me.
So you really see, in that way, you really do need each other.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like for Jhariah, you might never know when something is actually finished, or sonically, or from a standpoint. So you need someone like Cole to just be like, we got to stop. This has to go on tape and no more, or this is it. This is the sound. And I think that also shows a lot too, to have someone to know where where the creative focus is trying to land ultimately. And I love that the fact that you are in two different DAWs kind of forces that hand, which a lot of, we talk about a lot with the record process and moving through it, in a linear fashion sometimes, both physically and creatively. There is that old school mentality of like tape forced you to get the best sound in the moment and live with the best take and energy, as opposed to now where you can sit and spend 3 extra weeks trying to record one measure of a guitar lick, and still not be happy with it. I think it helps people move on a little bit quicker. And I think that's also, I want to get to the end of it, but this is, maybe now this is an interesting time to, at the top of the process, also talk about when when an idea is finished, and it sounds like, Cole is maybe, moving it to Pro Tools, and the committing process of that for you, Jhariah, really helps. But is there anything else that you guys tend to find, that's like what does it feel like? What does it sound like? And this is when a track is done, maybe for you, or maybe it's a separate moment for both of you.
Okay, here's like one of the things that like definitely really sucks about working with me is, okay, well, there are two things. One is that I feel like I'm pretty decisive as far as when something is done, because I usually know before I start what it is, or like what it's supposed to like look like and sound like. And it's just like a matter of taking this really blurry image, and just like refining it until it's like fully clarified.
Yeah, like when it gets to me, like I have like a ton of MIDI stuff of performances. I have a ton of vocal takes. Essentially, my job once it gets to me is just like, you gave me all of the blueprints.
Yeah,
I am just making like a final-ish say on just like, this is what it sounds like.
Yeah,
and shaping the blurry image.
Yeah, and then I think the other kind of tricky part is that because of that like very, I guess, visual way that I work, a lot of the time I have to see it finished to give certain kind of notes.
Of course.
So that's why sometimes like we'll go into like the mixing process and be ready for mastering, and I'll be like, okay, like this is how I have to hear it to know if I have to do new vocal takes.
Oh, right? Yeah. Totally.
And it's like not fun, for sure. But there's just something.
The amount of times I've done tape masters and had to scrap tape.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, I feel like all of the parts inform each other, and a good take might not sound good on tape. You know, I might hear it and be like, I think this would hit a little bit different if I did it this way, you know,
Totally.
Or maybe a take I thought was bad, you know, gets a little hot, and I'm like, this rules, you know.
Totally. Yeah.
So it's like all the pieces kind of inform each other, and I feel like that's like Cole just brings so much stuff that like I wouldn't have thought of, that like it's really great just for getting a whole different perspective and being able to like, you know, look at it from a different angle.
I think
and
that's
also
so
like
important.
I've gotten a lot more just in the way that I've pulled you that way. You've definitely pulled me more toward like committing less and letting things be a little more freeform until the last minute.
Commitment. Let's
not
go.
to an extreme point. I'm still very much just like, I can't have my entire rack of compressors running at any given time. But
So and Cole, that's also like an interesting thing. How is that different for you then when you know in your mind's eye a mix is done, right? Because that's also obviously anybody out there that's, you know, trying to learn that craft, you know, that's listening to this and, you know, has dabbled with that before, or even people that still do it on a daily basis know what it's like to struggle with that and to take something to the car and just be completely crushed after decades of doing it, right? It's still all part of the process. But for you, like, what is that, I guess, metaphoric, like car listening space or thing where you can now, you know, time where you know this is the mix that I'm ready to, whether it's let Jhariah hear or sign off myself on creatively. How do you know that?
I mean, for a lot of stuff, I guess when the song is done for you is when that's like pretty early on in the mix process. You kind of know if it's done-ish earlier on in the mix process. Then for me, I'm very detail oriented. So I might be like sitting with a mix for a couple days, going back in and just like, if something pokes out to me, fixing it, go back in, fix it, go back in, fix it, turn it on, leave the room. I hear a problem from another room, come back in, fix it.
Yeah.
Dude, that's such a great, for anybody listening, like in the mix world or whatever, the outside of the room, Tom and I, you've talked about this a lot too, just like going and getting a different like bird's eye view of it instead of just right at mix position hammering you, because sometimes you hear what you want to hear, but when you walk out and hear it from a distance, something else pokes out at you in a way different way. You know, I take my headphones off and just sit them there and play it, right? And I'm just like, what do I hear in that way? Oh, the kick drum, how do I hear that much kick drum in there? Cool. Yeah. I gotta dial it back.
I do the same thing. I feel like it's a lot like when you're doing when you're painting from reference, or when you're doing like figure drawings and stuff, at least a lot of like professors have had like that do fine art and stuff have said you should squint your eyes, right? You know, to like let less light into them and kind of abstract what you're looking at, because you get a more general, you know, like view of it. And I feel like it's a lot like that, you know, like stepping out of the room and just hearing like the overall thing rather than being able to hear too many details, because you just see some things you can see that close up.
There's another you could do like the mirror trick as well. Same thing as like eye squinting and like putting a mirror on the other side and like seeing it in the reflection. But also,
no, legit, I have a button on my console that actually just switches the left and the right.
Love that.
And you'd be so shocked how just like putting the left and the right on the left, how that changes your perspective on like an entire record.
Totally.
Well, I mean, if for nothing else,
it's not even the same song anymore.
Well, for nothing else, and this is like an interesting, like maybe like a mixed question, but also from like the sonic space that you're creating and the way this is like a conversation. And I know, you know, there are, I guess an A and B school of thought in a lot of it from like a rock band sense, or if you're talking about translating an organic drum kit setting, you know, is it drummer perspective, audience perspective kind of thing? And a lot of producers that I know, especially some of the older like committal tape guys, are always saying it's like, well, it's all, you know, it's all audience perspective. Committal tape, tape committal.
Tape committal's a good band name.
Yeah, that's great. Somebody note that. So in that way, it's like you flip the perspective of like literally you're going from like hi-hat, you're envisioning everything from you're watching the band to now you're behind or in the band in a certain way, just by flipping the right and left channel. So that's a really cool example of that. And I
well, also for another cool example, on at least our stuff, I only ever mix drums from my perspective behind the kit.
Drummer, right?
Didn't know that.
Yeah, I guess there's the drummer producer.
There's the drummer.
Well, and you know what's interesting, Cole? I actually, and I don't know why, I have not been a drummer by trade. But when I started out, that is also what felt right to me. And sometimes I think about it because I think about it from a writing and band like artist perspective. So in my mind, it's so much more interesting to feel like you are at the center of something in a practice space setting where you're a drummer and your amps are faced at you and you're looking at your singer from like a visual line of communication standpoint. And so that's the most in it you can kind of be, as opposed to an audience where you're just getting like a very curated show that maybe feels like a wall of sound thing. So it's interesting that I do find engineers turn drummers turn engineers kind of do that. And they are some of the guys that like that idea more. That's awesome.
Because I think also from my perspective, because I'm a person that likes to work with stereo width and everything. And being a drummer, the widest I ever hear sound is playing in a band with people around me. My perception of width isn't looking at a band and seeing maybe 20 degrees off of center of where sound's actually coming from. The way I know width is sitting in the center of the band. So that's how I just envision the entire mix, is just I am sitting here in the center. This is how I'm perceiving the sound.
Right. I mean, and so much of what, especially on this EP, you guys are doing so much of, it goes without saying, but like a theatrical, genre blending from section to section, and in such a drastic way, that's really important because you are kind of trying to change that scene or perspective very quickly sometimes, and push somebody else into a different look, right? So having that is a true asset because you can jump to this kind of like jazz-esque look and setting and thing, and curate that sonically from a mix perspective, but also an arrangement perspective, and then be able to shift somebody to another completely different look that comes along with it. That I think is a huge way. Jhariah, maybe you from like a writing standpoint, even, because that's kind of where we'll go next, from like the inspiration into like writing it and visualizing it. As you said, you kind of do. You have an image of what it looks like, right? And you're filling it in. How do you, imply those or start to conceptualize those shifts, that then get taken and extrapolated?
That's tricky. I mean, it's one of those things where it almost just feels really like intuitive. Like, for example, I've never really been one to like write whole songs before I start arranging them. It'll be like, I think very opposite of Cole's process. Like, I'll fully produce like a bar, like I'll do the full arrangement, and that will be like, oh wait, somehow like this is informing like the lyrics after that, and then that lyric will inform that part of the arrangement, and then all of it kind of starts to piece together like a puzzle. And I feel like that will really shape the motion of it, and somehow it just works out. I don't really know exactly how it gets from there to being a full song, but I feel like just the more clearly I tackle like a small bit of the song, the more the rest of it becomes clear. And hopefully if I've done a good job, then Cole will just kind of get it,
Totally.
Yeah. I mean, so that's such a cool example, because that talks about and explains a lot of how you think and maybe think differently, even from like the foundational like demo standpoint, where as like another like singer songwriter might, look at it and just like, here's a vocal, here's a top line with guitar, bare bones, and let me get the whole story all the way through and working, whereas you're drawing it back, and that's what actually allows the record and these songs to do so much of what they do dynamically dynamically and emotionally. And that's, maybe the only way that I guess, you're getting, because I'm sure so many people have the thoughts, just like on some of the records I know you've referenced with a lot of the like Black Parade stuff and Panic at the Disco stuff, right? People are like, man, how do they even like think about that like really quick like 2-beat change and then it flips the script to this, like how they conceptualize it? But that actually like makes a lot of sense when you think about the way that you work in small chunks and doses and fully build those looks out. And then, hey, here's this lyric. Well, that lyric, how can I answer that? Or how can I comment on that? Not just lyrically with the next line, but then musically and, and sonically. So,
yeah, I mean, I feel like it's one of those things where even if you're not trying to do it, if you have a roadmap in front of you, you're gonna like anticipate certain things. You're gonna have habits and you're gonna have things that you sort of, that just makes sense for you to hear. Like if you write the verse and the chorus and the verse again, you're already hearing that first verse under the second one. Yeah. So I feel like I'd almost rather just not write that verse yet until I have something before that that's gonna push me into like just empty space where there's like a new direction, and you can just kind of pull your favorite parts from the previous thing and kind of, like let it progress somewhere else.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to take a quick break here to give a huge shout out to Sheet Happens Publishing. They're a company that works directly with artists to create accurate and immersive tab books, vinyl, and other merch that allows fans to get one step closer to perfecting the soundtrack to their lives. I recently had the pleasure of putting together a book with them for my band The Wonder Years, and trust me, they are incredibly thorough and dedicated to artist-approved accuracy in all of these books. Every tab book comes with the accompanying guitar profiles, which is very cool, allowing you to jump right into playing along with your favorites. Head over to sheethappenspublishing.com to check out all of their offerings, and be sure to enter the code TRP15 at checkout for 15% off your first purchase. That's sheethappenspublishing.com, promo code TRP15. So go check out their amazing library of books, and happy shredding, my fellow guitarists.
And Jhariah, when you're like making these, instead of like songs right now, we'll call them splatterings. Like when they're in this like splatter stage.
Ooh, I like where you're going with that, Tom. I like how you're painting that for a visual artist.
It's so fucking lame to like say like, do you have like a mantra? But like, do you have like something that's like repeating in your head for like a particular song? I guess like as an example, like for myself, like I love watching like a short film, like an art film, and with the sound off, and like that's what I'm writing to. Is there like anything that's like some like in that world? Because I know y'all are like visual as well. Is there any visual component, or is it like a actual story component, or like what's that process?
Like from like a songwriting perspective, or just like demoing and stuff like that?
Honestly, from both, but like let's say either.
Word. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think definitely it depends, but most of the time there'll be like a reason I'm writing, Yeah. I like, honestly, I don't love like writing songs, it's more like a thing where I just feel the need to, because there'll just be something that like needs to be expressed or needs to be satisfied. And you just know that like a song is going to be the way to do it. I don't really sit down ever and just be like, I'm just going to like write songs for fun.
Totally.
So it'll be this thing where it's just, there's some kind of like urge or like some kind of thing that needs to be kind of uncovered, like I'm trying to think.
It's like this unsatiated like thirst. That's you're like, I need to satiate, I guess anyway.
Yeah, I guess so. It's kind of like when you feel like you might have found something, and you kind of get really attached to this like hypothetical thing that you might have found.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like I have to see this through. Like making the songs. I think it's really fun that a lot of people will say they're like very theatrical or like cinematic, which is definitely the goal. But making them also feels a lot like that, where you get in and you have to follow through. Like you want to find out what happens.
Yeah.
Because like you're just very captured by like the plot, you know?
Of course.
So it's almost like you're in your own choose your own adventure novel, that you're writing as you go, and you don't even necessarily know sometimes where it's going to land. You just know that you have to go find out, just like you can't put down a book, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I'd say a good half of the time I'm making songs from the perspective of someone who's going to be listening to them, you know?
Cool.
And then like another half of the time I'll be like, I guess I also have to like, like partake.
I guess I matter.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and what you're kind of describing too is, I think what gets baked into so much of the final product, which are things that I think great directors and great scriptwriters, have such a handle on, which is like curating suspense, tension, mystery, and putting yourself in worlds of like getting you attached to a character or to a storyline, so you're emotionally invested. And I think that's what, it gets boiled down to. Wow, it's like a theatrical sound. It's like, but that's really what you're talking about and what's happening there. So in that way, you're kind of putting yourself in a listener perspective as you're creating it. Like, hey, what would be really jarring, or really like, hey, I feel like I'm bored right now. I'm switching it up. If I was a listener, I'd be bored right now. That's such a cool way to do it. And I don't think you get that if you and this is obviously one technique from a songwriting standpoint. Tom and I work with a lot of clients in this way of like, starting out with the end in mind, right? But there's also such a cool merit to doing the complete opposite of that and saying, I don't know where this is going to go. I just had this do thing that's stuck in my head. I need to understand what that will grow into if I plant it in the ground, and see it through. So such a cool, unique way for y'all to work. That's awesome.
Yeah, I guess I never really thought about it like that. This is the first time I've been asked that question in that particular way. So that felt very like a lot of self-discovery in that one.
Oh, hell yeah.
Wow. Oh, yeah. Wow, we got to have a sound effect in post for that. Just like, man, wow, we're just knocking it out of the park here. That's incredible. But I mean, that's really what it is. And that's kind of how it comes off, especially, for, like you said, the audience and people that are listening to it. That's why I think it's having the reaction and people are resonating with it in the way it seems as though they are. So I mean, so that comes down to, the writing approach. And then, so, real quick, obviously you've touched on this a little bit. Who's like the where and the when of how it actually gets tracked? So obviously, Jhariah, it's probably a lot of you, right? In your own little bubble world, but maybe talk about that, like where it got tracked. And obviously, Cole, you've had a hand and tracked some stuff as well. What does that look like for these songs, or has it?
I mean,
it does definitely start with you.
Okay, so I feel like when we first started, we were talking about how we had sort of like built that foundation very quickly, and it was almost too quick to the point where we were like, let's work together. And then we slowly figured out how to actually do that. Yeah. So I remember like
it was rocky at the start.
It was pretty rocky.
It was rocky at first.
A lot of great relationships always are,
Yeah. And I think, at the very start, the idea of ever recording like in the same room as Cole was like terrifying. Like, I don't think I would have ever done that.
We still don't really do that.
We don't, but we do sometimes. And I think the thing that like I'm kind of getting at is that over time it's become a little bit more of a tool, I guess, where rather than like by necessity, recording, I think the first time I recorded with Cole like in person was just out of necessity because we needed to get it done and we were like at the studio at school or something. And then I think after that we did some stuff at his apartment, like if we needed a change of pace. I just for some reason really wanted to work on it in the same room as Cole. It was just very undeveloped. And I was like, I kind of want to see where this goes if I'm not the only one looking at it.
I think that's the only time I've been like seriously involved while the song was not formed at all.
Yes.
I think almost every other time it's come to me in some complete form before actually like putting down real tracks and going into production.
Definitely.
Which song was this?
Change of Pace.
Okay. And how did that like then impact when you look at them now that they're all finished? Like, what do you notice in terms of, because obviously like people listening might now hear that and see them differently in hindsight, but never have noticed it. How do you guys see the differences and how that affected the outcome?
I mean, I definitely always recognize the fact that that's the only song where there's like no live drums in it. And I'm just like, why didn't I do live drum? Oh, it's because I was behind the console the entire time.
Oh. Yeah. Another thing, every time I listen to it, I really appreciate how like immediate and simple it feels. And I feel like, you know, and this might not be a bad thing, but to some extent, I feel like when you're writing music in like another room with somebody, you feel like a little bit rushed, you know, like if I'm here alone in my room, I'll sit here for 2 hours and think about like a lyric.
I've been told I'd get vocal stems by the end of the day. And then 2 weeks later, I'll get vocal stems.
Yeah. But I think like when you're in the room with somebody, you kind of like really kind of speed run towards like that line that feels right. You know, you throw it out there and you're like, oh, hold on. You know, versus I feel like when you have time to ruminate over it, you know, you might come up with something better, but it's, you know, it starts to kind of mutate, you know, and I think Change of Pace is like a super simple song because I think we really just started to like capture what was there, like just the super like basic demo and just trying to turn it into something like real, you know?
Totally. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and honestly, you know, what you mentioned in terms of feeling like, you know, you have eyes on you and you're trying, you know, it's sometimes can have this like, you know, how quickly can you produce something, or maybe like there's a concept and someone else in the room says, what if we did something like this? It automatically feels like someone flipped the egg timer. It's like, how quick can you come up with a line that does that? How quick can you come up with a melody or a part that does that? And I mean, I personally can definitely resonate from that, you know, writing in a band of 6 people, and not everything is written or conjured up initially from that perspective, but it all gets worked on, and then okay, great, we have the bones of like an idea or like a working kind of proof of concept for a song in a lane, but then we still have to fill in the missing pieces. And then sometimes that's like often am the one that I'm just like, man, I would love to just bookend it right here and then go home and spend some time just with my own thoughts, thinking and trying things and workshopping things to get away from that. But at the same time, some of our best songs and some of my favorite songs were the ones that were just like, I don't know, what about this? And then everybody's playing it, and then a half an hour later, that's demoed, and that's literally the 30 seconds of music that stays exactly the same through the ending. So I love what you're saying in terms of getting that immediate, like, if it just works and everybody viscerally is like, has the most honest attraction to it, and you can all just get like a bunch of, you know, thumbs up, you know, metaphorically, really quickly. That's awesome. And you might, you know, I mean, not only is it a time saver, but yeah, it's like, you know, you might ruminate on your thought, is this good? Is it not? I don't know. Let me work on it for another week. Whereas, you know, instantly maybe Cole is just like, nah, that ain't it. You know, or, hey, stop. Wait, that's sick. That's awesome. But, you know, and you might have just breezed right past it and scrapped it.
I don't know how you're quoting me word for word. Right.
Yeah. Okay, no. This totally... Okay, speaking of that, I think a perfect example was when we got to the bridge of Change of Pace. Immediately when we reached that part, like, just the sound, like, sounded off in my brain where I was like, this is going to be stupid, but, like, what if we like took that like orchestral sample that like every keyboard sampler has, and Cole's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, okay, hear me out. And I played it to just like done, you know, and it's one of those things where I think if I had gotten that idea alone, I'd be like, no, it's like too silly.
But this is a bridge too far.
Yeah.
Once the sample fell into my hands, it wasn't gonna leave.
Yeah, and
like, no, this is ridiculous, and I love it. This is not leaving.
And I remember you weren't convinced on it at first. When I played another song with it, I think I was like, it might be a little. Me
a song that just like it was a little odd there.
I thought it was cool, but I think I was trying to decide. I was like, is this a little cheesy? And you heard it in the song, and you were like, yeah, this is pretty cheesy. And then we were like, but let's try it. Like, let's see. And like, we loved it. Like it came out great.
Amazing, dude. And the and having like a great partner like that, especially with songwriting, but even like production through and through. And Tom and I have a lot of examples, and I think, you know, this is why I am so lucky to be able to work on stuff with him or Adam and people like that, is because it's often, it only pushes as far as you're willing to like trust someone and be vulnerable with somebody else in a room. So that's why a lot of times I'm just like, how do people get like in like the Nashville and LA songwriting circuits where just like none of these people have ever met each other, and the skill set is not really like writing a great hook, writing a great lyric. The skill set is coming in and being able to immediately shake hands, nice to know you, and then be the most vulnerable you can be to just spit out ideas, which I think is the skill set all in itself. And when you can find that and develop that, not just your own talent and craft, that's awesome. That's when you get those moments where you're like, yo, if this were a complete stranger, I would never say this. But because I know, you, I'm willing to just laugh it off and be like, I mean, this is ridiculous, but how funny would it be? You say it as a joke and then it ends up on a record. I also know that reality very well. And but it only happens because you have that partnership and you have that trust baked in. That's awesome.
In this stage, have you found anything like when you translate it to live? Is there anything that changes? Because from like recording to live, I know that can be like you're like, I want the emotional context to be there live as well as like on the record, but how you do that live is always like a point of contention. Is that something that has like informed any of the songs, and have you gone back to any of the songs?
Absolutely not.
I love the commitment.
Wow. There is no thought about how we're going to be doing this live while we're writing it. We wrote that EP and then looked at it for live stuff. It's just like,
that was maybe my favorite part of this hour. That was beautiful. Where you're just like, no, unabashedly, no. That is where we in no way thought about it.
Do you hear Flight of the Crows? Do you ever hear me playing Flight of the Crows as it sounds on that record?
You know,
absolutely fucking not.
Hey, that's not saying I don't think you couldn't do it, and that also sounds like a personal challenge to yourself. I don't know.
Yeah, personal challenge.
Hey.
Anything that you have taken out live, have you gone back to any of the songs and were like, damn, should we like redo that part? And, like, because we like play it this way live now.
I mean, right now, I feel like the show, it's a little funny because I feel like when we listen to the songs, it feels like this sort of, it feels like a full band experience, you know, but like when we're performing, it's just the two of us. So it becomes a lot like a pop show is how I like to think of it. You know,
cool.
Yeah. When you like go and like, I saw Justin Bieber one time at like Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, you did.
And I was like, there's like, and I was like, there's
I
like,
didn't know that. Wait a second. What was the context for that?
My sister's a huge fan. And my parents were like, do you want to go? And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to miss like Madison Square Garden, Justin Bieber, and like, that's a show.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Got to believe.
You got to go that. You got to believe. Thank you, Tom.
Gotta believe.
Gotta. So that was like my first show ever.
Whoa.
By like,
whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And that was that, and then followed by like Panic at the Disco at like Jones Beach. So I feel like my like,
jeez,
I guess my background as far as like seeing live shows has always been this like big sort of like, you know, pop music experience where like the band is almost like
larger than life.
Yeah. And also I just feel like it becomes this thing where it's a lot more about like the production of the show and like trying to make something that's like really clean and like tight live. And that I think is translated over to the live shows, in that we take it and we're like, how can we just condense this? Like, how can we make these backing tracks sound really good? And how can we get that to work really well with like the drums? And you know, I think over time, it's going to definitely grow. You know, there's going to be, and it's like a very daunting like prospect. We talk about it all the time where we're like, it's going to be very difficult once we finally are ready to like get a guitarist on board and get them like into this world. You know, it's going to be a lot. but I'm excited.
Yeah, no, well, and you know what? Me too, actually, to see how that comes to be. And also, I'm going to reference back to another thing I've heard you say in an interview at some point where you talked about, I think, your background in high school and getting into the theater end of things, and how that just seems like everything that you're doing now and how it's become is almost a natural extension of so much of that in your time there. But you kind of phrased it as, and if this is incorrect or has maybe changed, let me know. But suffice to say that that seeing it come together in the in a theater production, it was something that gripped you. It was more about the culmination of all the parts as opposed to like your individual role in that and the performance you got out of it. And I wonder, from that standpoint, how looking at the live performance and how you're moving forward, even just starting, having performed some of these songs live, but maybe, in no way being like, great, we've been playing these songs for a decade now, so there's so much room to grow and extrapolate, this being admittedly a tough question to maybe answer. But what are some things that you guys have talked about, or maybe you've thought about on like a dream bucket list of like, hey, like from that like Bieber Panic size, live production budget, like what, if you pick a song and I know you think visually, so you probably have some, some things that you're like, hey, this would be cool. And I think a lot of bands start to do it as they develop their craft and like the whole outpouring of it. What are some things that you guys would like to try, or if you've talked about and you're like, yo, not now, but like maybe this, maybe just as like a sneak preview for anybody that's listening. And then maybe we can, when we have you all back on for like the next record or whatever, we can talk about how, hey, remember when you said like this would be insane and now you're doing it or something?
Oh my God. There's a lot of stuff. First of all, that was like a way better way of saying exactly what I was trying to say. So thank you for pulling that up. That feels a lot more concise. Like a lot of the time it feels like there's just a show happening and we're just part of it,
Yep.
There's all types of crazy ideas we've talked about. I'm trying to like think of some now. I mean, I'd love to do holograms, man. Like they just get like a really, I don't know if you've ever seen this at a show where they have like the sort of like kind of clear like panels and stuff, and there's like a whole like kind of light like hologram thing going on. I feel like there's a lot of cool stuff you could do with that, or like getting like a projector that's just like exactly the shape of like a set piece. Like I'd love to do sets. That's something I'm still actively trying to figure out how to do.
Jhariah's essentially just wanted our shows to be a theater production.
Well, that's exactly what it should be, but better.
I love it. Also
more difficult.
Yeah. Side note, the projector stuff and set piece stuff. I think I know a couple people when you're ready, because I want to make that happen because I want to see that show. It's truly as just like as a fan. Yeah. Like, so, let's talk and I'll shout out some people I think would be really cool. But I can already, that's the test of it, or I can already see something so much larger than life coming together with these songs. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool. And I think like on a more practical note, we'd love to get like a live horn section. That's something that is gonna be like in the much nearer future, because just how cool would that be?
Amazing.
I think it'd be amazing.
Listen, you're talking to a former trombone player all through junior high and high school. Maybe Tom, I
can vouch for Casey. Casey picked it up.
Okay, there's another checkered pass joke from Tom.
A checkered pass. He gets
one an episode.
Wow.
Yes, no, I was a big ska fan, so that the horns in rock thing definitely came naturally. I don't play anymore, but I'm happy to try to get the chops back if you start auditioning, because that would be a super fun climate.
Look, that's something that's probably happening like in the near future.
Definitely get back on that. Practice your lip trills. We'll be looking.
Full disclosure, I never practiced my lip trills, but the heart was always there. I always had the heart, I always felt like I got up to take a solo and everybody's like, man, he really means that. It wasn't great, but he really meant it.
He really went for it.
I feel like that was like our early shows, just like, it's not exactly there, but like I can tell that they care about playing.
They really went for it up there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really heartfelt, really genuine. They gave it the old college try.
The vocal was really cool.
Yeah, the vocals really cool, guy.
This brings me to my favorite international interview commentary trope where we always talk about traveling. I don't know, have you guys gone overseas at all or played, or has just been stateside thus far?
Yeah, so far just here on the Northeast US, but
not even like Northeast. Like we've been like New York, Philly, DC area, that chunk.
That's all that matters.
Yeah, that's our neck of the woods. That's the good stuff. We get it. Yeah, you don't need to go outside that 2-hour radius, really.
Sorry, Chicago.
But maybe you end up on, having the pleasure of doing like a really stoic German publication interview, or run into a fan there where you get the, hey, on recording it sounds good, live not so much. Why is this? And then you're just like, was that a compliment? Are we going to fight? I don't understand what's happening here. So maybe I'm told that it is actually a high compliment in that regard. But yeah, it is totally the recording was good, but I'm genuinely curious. Why are you not good live? I don't understand.
Oh, wow.
No,
wait,
I'm sure.
Case, did that happen?
Oh, this has happened like multiple. That's obviously why it has become parody, where it's, we were just friends just like, on recording, it's good. Live, not so much. Why is this? Like genuinely curious. And I'm just like, do you understand what you're saying and how this hurts my feelings? Or...
I wouldn't even know what to say to that.
I was like, you're here. You clearly like the music, at least the recorded version of it. So I was like, thank you. But also, this has to be over now. I'm walking away.
Absolutely.
So hopefully you'll never get the pleasure of that. But
we probably will.
Well, honestly, it's a great, I am proof here. It's a great story that sticks with you if you do.
Yeah.
Gripping journalism.
Yeah, right. But anyway, so I highly look forward to seeing you implement some of those ideas and taking them outside of the Northeast, which I'm sure is probably on the list of things to do. Where do you, going forward with this EP and the release of it? How's the reception been? And in terms of what do you see people getting out of the songs and reacting to the songs? Because as an artist, like all great art, it's like it's not finished until it elicits a reaction, right? So what's that been like?
Yeah, I mean, it's been great. I literally completely beyond anything I could have aimed for. I don't think either of us, we both, made this and we were like, we feel like people are going to like this. We feel like, we're going to reach a new audience, but I don't think we could have possibly like had this in mind as far as a goal. I mean, I think the thing that's been the craziest is just how much it's resonated with people, like creatively, like the amount. I feel like every other day I see somebody like did a painting or like designed a character based on the songs. And that's not like something, you always see, even with like much bigger bands. And I feel like that's just like, a testament one to just how cool these people are. And I think too, just like it really makes me feel like they're resonating with like me personally, beyond just the music. Like they're getting it more than just like the chords and the drums and like the production, like they're really resonating with like the core of the ideas, which is so satisfying, because when you make something, you feel like it might get lost, and people might just be like, this is a cool song.
Yeah. Well, and that isn't
the core of what we're doing. Like all of the songs are like pretty cinematic. They have a story. They have a world to them. And just like the fact that other people are kind of tuning into that in such a big way, it's kind of wild to see.
Yeah.
Well, and also it's like the creative evolution of these things. It's so cool to be like, people are not only enjoying it from an entertainment standpoint, but responding to it, and then it's having its own creative influence on them. And the fact that you're already kind of seeing that with fan art, which is such a cool representation of that. And my God, like how mind blowing to see like, hey, here's this character, or here's this drawing that was inspired by this song. And for you as an artist to see that come back and someone where, and know and understand the representation, not only of, hey, that's neat that they sent this to me or, tweeted this, but to be like, this person took a lot of time. I, as an illustrator, I know how much time that probably took, and to not take that lightly, but in such also, instead of, writing a really heartfelt note or, telling them, hey, I love this, the vocals are awesome.
Yeah, the vocals are cool.
Or mix, I don't know, I feel like I could do a better job. My name's Cole, here, slip into my DMs. Instead of doing that, you can, see someone to be like, hey, no, I slid in and took it and wanted to show my appreciation and become part of the journey and community, which is truly mind-blowing, right? And I've, even as not an illustrator, I can only imagine what that's like to see that and feel that. So that's amazing, and also truly a testament to the people that that the music attracts, right? And to see yourself in them is unreal as well, because I think something that I've always heard and has always, the older I get, the more I see it to be so, is that you can't always pick your fans. You can't always decide who, the music kind of does that.
Nose.
You can pick your nose, but you can't pick your fans. Tom Conran, high journalism here.
High journalism.
That's a great quote.
And so this is like the perfect representation of that, that you get to see people that you would want to hang out with, that you would also want to create with, that are enjoying and really resonating with it. So, I mean, congratulations on that, both you guys. It's phenomenal. What you're doing is so cool. I look forward to seeing more of it. Tom and I are fans, and I know a lot of people listening are as well. So hopefully they've gotten a lot of really cool inspiration from hearing you two talk about all this. And we look forward to having you on again soon, and seeing where you go. And hey, honestly, as soon as you get those holograms going, let me know. I'll be the first one to catch that shit from the front row.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Case, I'll fly down to Atlanta. We'll see them outside of the Southeast.
We'll check off a lot of the boxes in the future to come. I see it all coalescing. But gentlemen, thank you again so much from the bottom of our heart for being here and sharing all of this and sharing this time with us. And good luck with everything moving forward and the EP. It's awesome.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having us. I mean, this has been such a great conversation, and I feel like you don't always get that, So this is really fun.
This is a conversation of self-discovery.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Hits my heart so good. Well, thank you again, and we will catch you soon. So if you haven't already listened to this EP previous to this episode, then I think your next move is clear. That is to go follow Jhariah and download that EP, because you are really going to want to get the full experience of that. And then once you're done that, you can go ahead and come back and leave a review and tell us what you thought about the album. Maybe shout out to him. I'm sure he'd love to hear your thoughts as well. I'm so glad we got to talk to him and Cole about their creative relationship and how they play off of each other's strengths, because I think that plays a huge role in how those songs come together and how they sound the way that they do. And as you know, the show, we're all about collaboration, and I think shining a spotlight on that, especially in this instance, is really, really important. So take that idea with you into this week, wherever you might be going, and we will see you next week on
The Record Process.